Thanks, Jeff.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank everyone for coming over to Wilmington today, over to our Beach Street DTC facility. And we're going to take you through what our plans are to get this bridge reopened as quickly as possible. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm going to start this narrative from around 2 p.m. on Monday, when I became aware of a serious situation with the bridge on I-495. At that time, I made a decision pretty quickly after that to close the interstate and the bridge. And I want to be very clear that there are a lot of questions about what caused the bridge to tilt, what information did we have prior to the closure of the bridge that might have changed our actions. I want to be very clear there will be an appropriate time to deal with all of those questions. We are very interested in getting all the answers to those questions, but our primary focus right now is prospectively, how do we get this bridge back open to traffic for the 90,000 people a day who are using it. One of the other things I would like to point out, that when you close an interstate, it is a big deal. And so as the Secretary of Transportation, I did inform the governor shortly after our decision to close the bridge. And I did not speak directly with the governor. I spoke to the chief of staff, who walked in and interrupted the governor in a meeting. And within a few minutes of having that conversation, I had received a confirmation that the governor had accepted our recommendation and wanted us to close it pretty quickly. And at that point, our decision was, do we need to close the bridge immediately, i.e. there is a chance of this bridge failing, and we need to stop traffic by driving trucks on the bridge and preventing traffic from continuing. And from our analysis of our engineers' reports, we decided that we could do it safely without causing traffic chaos. And so we got the crash trucks and the cones, and within a few hours we were able to close the bridge, and we did it safely, which was something that we were grateful that we were able to accomplish. And I'll also detail some of our activities this week, but as soon as that bridge was closed, our thoughts immediately turned to, how do we get this bridge back open? And so what we were very focused on doing is getting the right team of experts in the room from across the country, who could literally tell us what was going on with the situation and how we were going to be able to get open again. And so on Tuesday, and Harry, I believe, was at the bridge on Monday night from AECom, and on Tuesday I walked into a room and we had folks from AECom, and again, Harry is here today representing AECom. AECom is a multinational firm with thousands of employees, and so there's a lot of folks at AECom that are not here today because they're busy working on the solution. And we had folks from the Federal Highway Administration, and not just our local folks, but we also had a geotechnical expert who had come in, who had worked on the issue in Wisconsin a few weeks ago, because we knew that there was a subsoil issue that had to be addressed. We had civil engineers from the University of Delaware. We had actually asked a gentleman who is considered to be an expert on this matter in terms of bridges to come down. So we literally had all of the experts together in the room to determine how we're going to get this back open. And at the end of the day, my chief engineer called me and said, we don't want to get too far down this road with the design and then have the contractor come in a couple of weeks and say, you've designed something that I can't build. And so they said, there's a contractor that we know, who we've worked with before in emergency bridge situations, who not only has experience with the superstructure, but also has the expertise in-house and the experience in order to deal with the subsurface issues, which they will talk about here, which are pretty significant. And so for me at that time, I did not know where the firm was based. I just knew that I had the expertise at the ready who could bring people on. And because we made those decisions last week, I want to tell you right now that the expertise, the equipment, and the material to get this bridge reopened are on their way to Delaware right now. So part of this solution is going to involve drilling foundations down to bedrock. When you drill down that far, you need casings. The casings for these shafts were in Oklahoma and in Washington State, I believe, earlier this week. They're on a truck on their way to Delaware right now. And more importantly, and I think Harry and can talk about this some more, when you put into those shafts will go cages, so that you can have reinforced concrete in there. If we had to fabricate the cages to go inside these shafts, that alone would take 6 to 8 weeks from a fabrication standpoint. But because we had the right team of people in the room, and somebody who knew that at the Tappan Zee Bridge right now, they're working on a very similar project, and they have these materials already fabricated and ready to go, they reached out, and some of those cages are on their way to Delaware right now. They'll be here later this week, so when the drilling commences, we've got the material there. So I just want people to understand that we have literally hit the ground running and are very committed to getting this bridge back open. Now, in terms of options to get the bridge back open, there's really three things you can do. One would be to come in and jack up the existing bridge, put a support underneath it, and put it back in place so that you can very quickly reopen to traffic. That would obviously be the first thing that we'd want to do. But as Harry will get into here in a few minutes, because of the very poor soil conditions in that area, there's, we don't want to put that kind of load on the soil, and we would not be able to accomplish the jacking effectively to get the traffic back open. The other option, and this is still something that is on the table, there is a small chance that we will have to completely tear down this section, this 400-foot section of this bridge, and rebuild a new section. If that is the case, we will be looking at later this year or early next year before you would see traffic there. And again, that is something that we are trying to avoid as an option, and that's why they're trying to engineer literally on the fly, bringing the builder in at the same time so we can avoid that. So what we've come up with is sort of a hybrid solution of putting the bridge on a firm foundation and then jacking up the existing structure in order to open the southbound lanes first, because there is less damage on that side, and the northbound lanes potentially a month later. We will know more about a specific date in a few weeks once this drilling has commenced and we understand what is going on up to 140 feet below the surface. But the bottom line is that right now we are looking at around a Labor Day target of opening the southbound lanes, with the northbound lanes to open 2 weeks to a month later. Now, as I said, in a couple of weeks we'll be able to firm that up. Could it get better? It could. But could it get worse? It could. And so we don't want to set unreasonable expectations at this time. And so with that, just as a brief update in terms of activities around the site, a lot of people have commented on the fact that there have been 24/7 operations going on down there since we started, and I want to commend some of the Delaware contractors who have been down there helping us remove that dirt. 50,000 tons of dirt was removed as of yesterday. And that was where, again, we pointed out that the bridge has begun to rebound slightly, which again gives us reassurance about getting that dirt out of there. We also had been taking soil borings over the last week. Last night they actually started tying together the piers so they act as one unit. So we've been preparing the site, we are getting ready to go, and I'm going to turn it over to Harry Roker, who will start kind of giving his background and then take you through the solution they've come up with. Thanks, Harry.
My name's Harry Roker. I work for AECOM Engineering. As I say, approximately 45,000 engineers around the world, engineers, professionals, planners, construction people. My own background is a bridge engineer primarily, and relevant to the 495 project, I have worked at different times on emergency projects restoring bridges after derailments, ship collisions, truck hits, storm washouts. So I've done that both as a designer and working with the construction forces to restore the bridge. About 37 years experience. With that, I'm just going to give touch base on a background of where we're at and then carry forward. The boards are basically in order and they'll be up, but I'll work off the PowerPoint. Basically, this is an aerial view of the bridge with the piers. Just to make it clear, the bridge is basically two bridges, and there are two piers only loosely tied together. There's a small tension tie, but that's the little bar here. Each of these is a foundation. We call this a pier, and then we have an east and a west. This would be west, this would be east. From Pier 10 left or south, and from Pier 15 to the north or right here, Delaware has inspected the bridge, or forces have been inspecting it, and we have no signs of distress in any of the other areas of the bridge. So what we'll be talking of primarily is in this zone from Pier 11 to 14, where we have evidence of distress. This view is something of a exaggerated view, but it does show, it's exaggerated to show the conditions and to allow everyone to understand what we're facing. The bridge has leaned. This is only one of two hammerheads. Again, there's like a paired structure here. And what you're seeing is a lean over produced we believe, all indications are, from a lateral force pushing against the original bridge foundation, which consists of steel piles tied together near the surface by a concrete foundation or footer. As you can see, with the leaning of the pier, there is a distortion in these piles. The piles go through soil at the top that is largely fill. I'm sorry, we'll go here. Largely fill of a mixed composition. Then we have a layer of extremely poor organic clay that is probably just the compacted, long accumulated mud from when the river used to run here. And then down into stiffer material, sand and a stiff clay and bedrock. The piles originally went down into that stiffer material and were in this loose, very poor, very consolidated, or material that can be easily consolidated and compressed. That's the organic clay. The distress that we've seen, some distress at the foundation level, and the piles are bent. Basically, the conditions we're seeing are telling us that everything in the ground is no longer reliable, can no longer be counted on for the long-term solution and for what we're using now when we want to go jacking. A concern about jacking here through this compressible material, if we tried to land basically at grade level, it would load the piles that are already compromised or potentially compromised and unreliable. And the support provided by this soil is not good. And very springy. We would anticipate a great deal of variation, and it's just not very stiff. The solution is to sink new foundations deep to bedrock. We've designed around the materials that are available. What's being designed, what has been designed and what's being is underway now, procuring materials and equipment, is a 4-foot diameter concrete shaft. It'll be reinforced concrete within a steel casing. The casing helps to sink the hole from grade level approximately anywhere from 100 to 140, maybe 150 feet deep to the bedrock. Basically, there will be 4 here, per hammerhead or per single shaft, so 8 per pier, tied together with what we're calling a grade beam, which is will be a concrete beam that will be constructed once these shafts are in place. The concept, and I may ask Greg to elaborate a bit on this, the concept will be jacking towers off that grade beam to get support up to the superstructure, the girders and the roadway.
Okay. Hi, I'm Greg Burkhart. I work with J.D. Ackman. We're a general contractor. We do roads and bridges. We worked on several different bridges in Delaware. We've done I-95 through Wilmington, the Wilmington Viaduct. We've done emergencies jobs for DelDOT, the Brandywine, I-95 over the Brandywine a few years back had a crack. We were called in to fix that. 10th Street, the truck ran into it. We were called in to shut that I-95 down for a weekend and restore the traffic back on that by Monday. We also done several jobs throughout Pennsylvania. Most recently, the Harrisburg truck fire that was over top of 81. We restored that traffic back in 4 days. So we also have done the Richmond Avenue, I-95 in Philadelphia. There was a cracked column. We were called in by PennDOT to come in and jack the bridge up and fix the bridge there. So we have extensive experience with this kind of work. We have 8 licensed professional engineers on staff that this is all we do. That's their job. Being jacking plans and erection plans and demolition plans, we have the people in-house. So it gives us a little bit of an advantage to get answers very quickly. When I was on vacation last week, and I was called by Dept to come up, so I had to leave my 6 boys and little kids, and Bop had to go to work. So we called up, and I walked into the meeting, and to Dept's credit, everybody that I knew that was an expert was there. Between HNTB, Federal Highway, Ted Zoli from Harry I've known for quite a few years, and we've done emergency work together. Okay, so that's sort of my background. I'm a structural engineer by trade. I don't do that so much anymore. I got other guys that do that, but they're much better at it than I am. But that's my background. We certainly, every aspect of this job we've done. And it's haven't had a specific job exactly like this. I don't think there ever will be, but every part of this job we've done, as far as drilling the caissons down to bedrock, installing the caissons, the grade beams, the jacking. We do hundreds of bridges a year, or at least we've done hundreds of bridges for jacking. So the concept is to put that grade beam in, put jacking towers on top of the grade beams, and then put a header beam across the towers. There we'll then put on jacks, hydraulic jacks, and typically they're 100-ton jacks. And if we need more than 100-ton, we nest them together or use bigger jacks. And in any particular northbound or southbound, there's 6 girders, I believe, and there'll be 4 piers. There'll be 24 jack locations, and we're jacking everything simultaneously. And we'll have feedback from every jack to tell us where it is in relationship to the other jacks, so that we can get this back up to the proper height and alignment. Okay. Oh yes, you can take this out.
Okay. And Greg points out the number of jacks. One point to note, excuse me. One point to note is for the piers that we're planning to do work, these girders run continuously across the supports. And so we have to look at it as not just one span at a time, but in fact a continuous unit. It is known as a continuous girder. And that's relevant to the jacking plan, also relevant to assessing the loads and the stability of the superstructure. What you're seeing are the 4 piers. In all cases, we are talking about going to bedrock with a new foundation because the existing foundations are deemed unreliable. There are basically 2 types of configurations once we get that new foundation in place. And on Pier 11 and 14, we believe the piers themselves above ground can be reused or continue to be used. And so we will be essentially underpinning those piers to our new foundation. In the case of Piers 12 and 13, where the leans are much more severe, we anticipated it's a better solution to get the temporary loads, or get loads and support for the superstructure to allow traffic to resume on the temporary towers, and then to take out the existing towers and build a new substructure on new piers on our new foundations. And actually the next slide shows that the other direction. Basically here again, 4-foot shafts down to bedrock, that common beam that was used to jack, and this shows that what we're proposing is what would be called a 3-column bent, different configuration, but 3 columns supporting the existing substructure.
So we're going to open it up for questions if anybody has them. Before we do, I just want to go over a couple of other items. We put this out yesterday, but we have been looking at all of the traffic options in terms of ways we can optimize routes, getting the message out to people both in the area and in the region, to if they're coming down from New York, to stay on the Turnpike and take the Delaware Memorial Bridge across. We do have a closure on 95 northbound this week. a part-time closure between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. We had planned to close 95 and 202 for that construction job this weekend. In preparation for that, we had removed the asphalt, and what has happened under the heavy traffic is that the road is unraveling a little bit, and so we are going to have lane closures from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., but they will be monitored. Our traffic folks have looked at the traffic counts at that time. We believe the traffic counts are low enough that the traffic should not back up, but we'll be monitoring it, and if it starts to back up, we'll pick up the closure and flush the traffic through. And so we've been getting a lot of questions about that, and so we just want people to be aware that we will be continuing to monitor traffic conditions, providing that information on our website, and just continuing to provide these updates as we go along. So Jeff, I don't know if you want to come up and moderate the Q&A.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I think what would be effective is if all three of our speakers would kind of gather around so that when a question is germane to your area of expertise, you can step to the microphone and they can get their audio. So at this point, please, and be aware, these guys are very busy. They've got a bridge to reopen, so our time here this afternoon is somewhat limited, so this is your opportunity to ask questions. Thank you.
Number one in the public's mind is, when is this going to reopen? You mentioned something about Labor Day for the northbound lanes, and then about a month, and for the southbound lanes, then about a month later for northbound lanes. Clarify for us the temporary columns and the foundation, and people, I guess, are wondering why can't you just put out temporary columns and get the thing back in place and then do all the foundation work? But do you have to do the foundation first before you can do any of that temporary bracing?
Yeah, so I'll pull Harry in on the foundation, but for the layperson who is not, a bridge person, basically we want to make sure that this bridge is sitting on concrete that goes down to bedrock before we reopen it. And that is what will happen, and that is what we're going to do. In terms of the southbound versus the northbound, right now, because there's a lot of stuff that we don't know about down 140 feet, we are estimating a Labor Day for the southbound, and they're saying it's 2 weeks to a month potentially for northbound afterwards. When that happens, we may determine that if it's only going to be a week or 10 days, we may wait and just open southbound. If it's going to be a month, we might look at opening two-way traffic on the southbound. We might do it directionally based on time of day and traffic counts. That'll be something we determine. And Harry, do you want to talk about the foundation?
Yeah, basically, I'm sorry. It comes down to the conditions over here. Two major points I will highlight. One of them is the depth and the nature of the soil, approximately 100 feet of extremely poor soil. The second point I did not elaborate on. There are two types of pile. We call these plumb piles, basically straight up and down, and they're called a batter pile. And basically the original designer used those batter piles the way you would spread your feet to be more stable. All right, perfectly fine thing to do. However, in conjunction with that poor soil and the addition of load, it has a tendency to bend those piles. And so anytime you load that, you bend these batter piles. They are particularly susceptible to damage. We had piers that were already leaning, and any load that we put without going past them, without bypassing the uncertainties of them and the soil, risked bending them further, and all the while we have a bridge up top. So the scenario that we went through in trying to not go deep basically kept pointing back that every time we would try and take the load, we were likely to move that pier, and we still didn't have the bridge lifted up yet. The jacks will go whichever is weaker. If the soil provides less resistance than the weight of the bridge, it goes down. And that is likely to have happened, and the ramifications in the compromised foundation were too much of a risk.
Okay, thanks. Next.
So what caused the tilting? Is it underground soil movement?
So I want to be very clear that we are looking at all potential causes for the tilting, and we will continue to provide updates on that, but it's a little premature right now to definitively say what caused the tilting. We do have inclinometers in the ground right now that are monitoring. Not only do we have tilt sensors on the bridge that have shown that the bridge has stabilized and has started to rebound, but we have inclinometers that have been put in the ground, and they are tracking right now as to whether there is continuing to be any movement underneath the ground. But this design accounts even if that is the case.
Well, the rebound came as a result of removing that pile of dirt, so that's clearly one of the causing factors here.
That would be something that, again, we're taking as an indication that it was the right move to get that soil out from under there. And so, yes, that is one potential cause for downward force that would create a lateral force.
How did that soil get so close to the bridge to begin with?
That is one of the things that we are looking at.
You had a fence around it, right?
That would be a typical case. We are going back to when the bridge was designed back in the 1960s and built in 1974 to find out were there any rights of use that might have precluded a fence. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff we have to look at, and so I don't want to go out and say right now definitively that yes, a fence was there. I mean, we're just running all that down.
Where did all the dirt go?
So the dirt, and Rob, feel free to jump in if I don't say this correctly, but all of that dirt is being tested, because we just don't move dirt that might be contaminated. So it was tested. We obtained permits through DENREC, and it was moved to a couple of sites down around the riverfront, I believe, like South Market Street, sites that were in need of fill. In fact, we actually got a call from somebody in Jersey, I think, who is actually wanting the fill if they need it, but we've already found a place for it.
When you say that people, there have been some questions about how quickly you responded, then you hear the 911 call, clear as day, a guy back in April said, bridge is off. I mean, he said, you could have said it any more clearly.
Yep.
You guys going back and looking into your own office to say, like, how did this get missed?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things, I came from the Federal Highway Administration, and one of the things that is part of the culture there, and one of the things that we want to make sure is the culture in every DOT across the country, is that bridges are a critical piece of infrastructure. And while we are grateful that this bridge was closed in time, we are grateful to all the people who keep an eye out for us. If you recall, that crack in the bridge over the Brandywine was called in by somebody, I believe, who was walking underneath it. And there was another issue in Maryland over the weekend where somebody called in and reported. And so, look, we are going to run down 100% as to could we have reacted better, should we have done something different, what was our reaction, but there will be a time for that. Right now, our engineers are focused on getting this bridge back open.
Do you have any documentation that indeed a representative went out after that 911 call was made?
We are running down all the things that we have, and we will provide a full report on that very shortly.
What do you know now about the response to the 911 call?
What I know is we are running down all of the facts on it, and we will provide that information.
Are you satisfied with your agency's response to the 911 call?
I am satisfied with my agency's response to closing down the bridge once we received actionable information. There are a lot of other factors as to could we have done it hypothetically better, would we have done it hypothetically better. I'm telling you that if somebody calls 911 and says something's going on, we want to make sure that we're responding. And once I understand fully what our response was, I'll be able to answer that question.
We'll convene another news conference.
Call, actionable information?
I'm not sure what that question means, but what we will do is we will come back and we will do a full press conference like this. I want to be very clear here. We want to be an open book on this. We want to be as transparent as possible. We don't have anything to hide. If we've made mistakes, we will own up to them. If we understand once we understand what caused the bridge to tilt in the first place, we will do a full accounting of that. Right now, what we are very focused on is getting this bridge back open.
And I have a question for the engineers. How close was this bridge to a possible catastrophic collapse?
You want to get behind
Step up
the...
to microphone, please.
I'm truly not focused on that. It's a complex structure, and getting to collapse to analyze that involves a lot of things. That's not where my focus is. I'm really not prepared to answer that.
Well, you see these bent pilings over here. You see the condition of the soil, how soft it was. I mean, that must have set off some pretty loud alarm bells with you when you first looked at the condition of things over there.
Well, one thing is you see more now than we see from the surface. Also, the Delaware engineer was the one that was initially there and made the assessment, and I think it was a prudent assessment. But basically, again, we haven't done all the work that would be necessary to answer your question in that regard.
How concerned are you about soil around the other pilings? I mean, this is what we see in this situation, but the soil, I mean, obviously there's a heavy load of dirt there, but are you concerned about what might be at the other pilings, even just the quality of the soil down deep, and the other pilings even across the bridge?
In other locations, there has been an inspection of the structure, and there's no signs of distress. There's no, one has to recognize this bridge has still been in service for over 40 years successfully. And so there is no indication of the other location showing distress, right now, we believe that's fine. We have one other condition, I may add, that could have, basically when we see these conditions, we think what could do this, because you can't see things directly. One is lateral pressure, and that has a lot of factors visible that make you think that's a contender, at least. The other one would be the possibility of heavy corrosion on the piles. That would typically be systematic or would be widespread. And so we did an excavation, Delaware did an excavation to examine the piles, and there is no significant corrosion visible. That put one of the contenders away.
The bridge is designed and constructed 40 years ago was successful. Nothing happened until 2 years ago when the inspection, since 2 years ago when the last inspection was done. In those 2 years, that dirt pile arrived. Wouldn't you have to say the lateral force was caused by that dirt pile?
No, what we can say at this time is that there was a lateral force. We know that 2 years ago, the bridge was in good condition based on our reports, and we know that it is no longer in that condition. I cannot say at this time definitively what caused that lateral displacement. Absolutely, that dirt pile was obviously something that we were looking at immediately when we got out there. We've removed it. The bridge has started to rebound, but that is as far as I can go right now. There are other causes that we need to examine and look into, and we will do that.
Every contractor says when they come to your house to fix something, they say, oh man, the guy who did that last time, they screwed it up. Are you guys looking back at whomever designed and built this bridge back in the 70s and saying, this wasn't done right?
I mean, the bridge has given 40 years of excellent service, and I mean, the bridge was designed and built. There are a lot of structures that are built like this, and so I think it's a good bridge, and we are absolutely going back to the as-builds, the design plans, to fully understand as part of our, a very broad effort, I will say, to understand how this occurred, but I'm not here to speak disparagingly of the contractor who built it.
Have you found any other problems in Delaware bridges? I know you guys inspected some with similar conditions and big piles of...
Yes, so we have, as I stated last week, we have about 1,600 bridges. 56% of those are culverts or pipes that we are not going to consider that there is an issue with materials stored beside it because it's underground. Secondly, we have a large number of bridges that are over water. So the marsh through I-95, it's not likely that we have somebody who's storing something beside that. What we have initially done is identified approximately 30 bridges that are over 500 feet in length that might have a similar configuration and might be something that if there was something stored within 100 feet, we wanted to get an eye on it. We have literally gone out and looked at all of those bridges. All of them have been visually inspected and are being measured. There are no signs of distress in those. There were a couple that had some materials stored nearby or vehicles parked near them. We've asked people to move them away, and that will be part of our ongoing review as we go into this, as to determine what our right-of-way needs are with regard to these bridges. And we will look at all of the bridges in our inventory, but right now it's a sort of a triage as to which are the ones that we need to get to quickly.
This is a huge remediation project. How much is it going to cost, and where's the money coming from?
So it is right now we have an estimate, and again, one thing I want to stress is this is a classic design build, right? So you've got a designer and a builder working together. So normally how this would work is you would have somebody come in, give you an estimate, then you would design it, and then you would provide an estimate. So what I am providing to you right now is a very rough guess based on about a week's worth of assumptions, and we're still narrowing those down. We are estimating right now that the temporary construction fix is about $20 million. Now, note, please, that we often keep a contingency in place on a lot of these projects. $20 million could have a large contingency if there are things underground that we find that we aren't expecting. And so the $20 million, we have received $2 million in emergency relief funding from the Federal Highway Administration, and we will continue to work with them to make sure that that funding is available and that we qualify to have, I think it's 100% of the initial costs with regard to like traffic movements and things you need to do, and then 90% of permanent replacement costs that are covered.
So the temporary is $20 million. How much is the permanent?
Well, and again, that is what we would feel if you look at that board over there. The permanent solution utilizes the temporary solution. So what you do for the permanent solution is you come in and you demolish the two piers that are that were there, that were being supported by the supporting towers, and then it's something else that is holding up the bridge. But that is after traffic is opened.
So it's
Do you
just
now
not
have to
known.
prioritize projects because of this one, other road projects in the area of concern?
Yes, so, in Delaware, we have a prioritization list that says, here are all of our federal dollars, here are all of our state dollars, and we use a piece of software called Decision Lens that ranks all of those in terms of, how much they contribute to safety, how much they contribute to economic development, how much they contribute to a number of factors. This was a project that was not on the list as of last week. This project has now been dropped to number 1 on that list. So there will be a cascade, a ripple effect down through that, and that is something we will better understand over the next couple of weeks as we look to firm this up. However, we did, earlier this year, establish a line of credit that we had brought together just for cash flow purposes. And so from a do we have the dollars to make this happen right now? We are absolutely committed to making sure that we are moving forward. We have dollars in place, but there will be a project impact as we go forward. But that, again, what I have right now is a pretty long list of issues we need to address, and how this impacts other projects is an important consideration, but it's probably not like, something we're worried about right now today.
You clearly hired a company that has done this before and knows what they're doing. What do you say to all these contractors, you see in the paper from Delaware saying, let's keep the money in 302 here?
Yeah, so I completely understand that, that people who live and work in Delaware want, these dollars to stay in Delaware. And I absolutely agree, and the contractor has agreed to bring on, a number of Delaware firms. I want to be clear that the firm that worked 24/7 with us to haul the dirt away is a Delaware firm. The soil borings were conducted by a Delaware firm. There will be a lot of this work that these guys are going to have to sub out, and they have committed to doing that, not because they're being forced to do it, because they want to do it and they have to do it. I also just want to have a little bit of perspective on this. So people think $20 million, and that is a lot of money. $20 million is not a small amount of money. But just in terms of project size, the I-95 and 1 project that we completed last year, which a lot of people have said have improved our commute to the beach and everything, by Christiana Mall, that was about a $120 million project. The proposed 301 construction in Newcastle County is about a $380 million contract. So for this to be a $20 million contract, it's not the same as if we were rebuilding the entire bridge. And so there will be opportunities for other companies and folks to get in on this, but it's not a big deal. But my number 1 priority was not concerning myself with where is the contractor based. It's I have the team of experts telling me this is the person who can do it, and that's what we base that decision on.
Will you seek to recover any of that 20 million if there are any liable parties?
That is absolutely something that we are going to consider as we go forward in terms of, where does this $20 million, how does that get paid? And we are going to consider that. We're going to take all the necessary steps to make sure that Delaware taxpayers are, looked after. And that is something that we are, again, that's why we want to be circumspect in all the things that we're saying right now, because we don't want to come out definitively and say, here is a cause, or this is the case, because my sense is that there will be, a long unraveling in terms of liability and all that stuff, and we'll be hiring the appropriate experts for that as well.
How much did it cost? $260,000. Mr. Thomas giving me that money?
No. The question was, how much did it cost to remove the dirt pile? The answer was $260,000. And then the follow-up question was the gentleman who owned the dirt pile compensated? Absolutely not.
Did that all go to Watson? What company did it?
Diamond Materials came in and removed that.
Secretary, you talked about not being 100% sure what the cause was, but you did choose with your engineers 30 bridges to look at. My sense is all of those bridges were in Newcastle County. So are you basically saying that that's what I was told earlier today?
A large number of them was. I'm not sure if every single one was. Most of them was.
That's what I was told.
Most of them.
Yeah,
So can you tell me, without knowing what the cause was of this, specifically, why not look at anything in Kent? Why not look at anything in Sussex? You kind of
Oh,
look
we
at it a
will.
little bit, but-
We will absolutely look at everything in Kent and Sussex. What we have very specifically is a,
I've looked in Sussex County, it includes bridges in Sussex County.
okay.
Okay. Sorry, that's
Yeah,
from
the-
your PR staff, but, you know,
The
that's
the
all.
majority of them were in Newcastle County, but there are some in Kent and Sussex. And the bottom line is this, we're going to look at every single bridge. We prioritized 30 that were over 500 feet in length, that shared a lot of these characteristics, because those are the ones that we wanted to get to. We will go to every single one. And as part of our bridge inspection protocol, please keep in mind that we inspect our bridges every 2 years. And so we will be, implementing new protocols with regard to our bridge inspection. Again, like I said, there's a broad effort underway here. There's a lot of things that we want to get to, and that will be something we will address. And again, over the next months, we will be coming out very transparently, keeping you abreast of what is going on, and letting you know exactly what steps we're taking.
And Mike, we'll get with you on whatever bridges we looked at downstate.
Okay.
Yeah, we can provide that list.
All right.
You mentioned a couple of these 30 bridges you've looked at, had materials or
Mhm.
vehicles. Which bridges?
We can get that information for you.
Did you say in the beginning that a small option is still tearing down that 400-foot section?
Yes, so.
When does it come to that point?
So that will be a decision point. We will probably know that in the next couple of weeks. Once we have the foundations in, then it becomes a superstructure issue. Everything above the ground. Things above the ground are easier to fix, right? And one of the problems that these folks have is the fact that because that bridge is still there, so if we were building a new bridge in the middle of a field with a road that wasn't open, what you would do is you would go out, you would advertise it, you would design it, you'd have a lot of time. And what you would come, in order to put those foundations in, you would bring in the tallest drill you could find, because it could hit that ground no problem. What we have is a bridge with a 60-foot clearance. And so in order to get under the bridge, you have to have a smaller drill. And so there are a lot of issues and unknowns, and when those drills start, what are they going to find under there? Are they going to, run into something? I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. And so just to answer your question, we have identified a small chance, but not insignificant, that maybe we get a couple of weeks into this and decide, we got to go back and we're just going to have to build a new bridge. If that is the case, we'll have another news conference, and we'll be standing here saying this didn't work, and we're looking at that worst case scenario of early next year to get this open.
You're looking at a closure for the entire summer tourist season and whatever. What are you doing to help alleviate congestion from Wooders? Are you going to be looking at things as they dynamically develop, or do you have a plan in place to try to divert traffic as easily and quickly as possible?
Yeah, we have, and Delawareans and anybody who's visiting Delaware, we would encourage you to, download our app, the Del Dot app, that will give you real-time traffic conditions. And so if you're coming here, and we want you to come here, we want you to know that there are good times. I'll tell you, I drove on 95 this morning to get to this building at about 11 o'clock, and traffic was moving. Now, I was also looking at the cameras this morning around 7:30, and traffic was pretty heavy. So if you show up in any major city around the country during rush hour, it's going to be tough, and that is what we are going to be experiencing. We're going to experience big city traffic on 95 for the summer. But there are windows, there are times, if you plan appropriately, you can get down here and you can pretty much get through the traffic. One thing we've done, as an example, is we're reaching out to all the folks who are coming to our Firefly Festival next week. They're projecting about 70,000 people are going to come here. Most of those people are coming from out of state. So we've already been working with Red Frog to reach out to them to say, if you're coming from New York and you were planning on staying on 95, get on the Turnpike and just bypass that area completely. If you're coming from Pennsylvania, you're coming down 476. Instead of turning right to come through 95, take a left, take the Commodore Barry Bridge, and you can still get across the Delaware Memorial Bridge. And what you'll find is traffic was really, really bad on the day after this happened. But people are modifying their route choices. They're discovering new routes, and we're going to be working daily to find a way to improve their commutes. But the bottom line is you can't take the capacity for 90,000 cars a day and just distribute that on other roads and not expect there to be an impact. So that's why we are laser focused on getting this bridge open as quickly as possible.
One thing that struck a lot of people as odd are things like all the orange cones that are blocking up part of the Naaman's Road exit southbound, where 495 diverges from 95, and making that a much more treacherous exit for some reason. What's the purpose of that?
We can have our traffic folks talk to you afterwards, and we'll we'll make, they're in the back over there, so that we can make that available.
We had a problem for years with Delaware's reputation for our stretch of 95, and then by Christian Mall, it sort of got better. Now you have this, it's just sort of one step forward, one step back in terms of, you know, for you to see this as.
Well, I'll tell you, I became a father in November, and we had a pretty tough winter, and I was looking forward to a nice, easy summer. And that's not going to happen. And so we've actually made a lot of improvements to 95 this year, or in the last couple of years. When we opened the high-speed, easy pass lanes, we used to have terrible backups on 95 on every long weekend because everybody was stopping, and now they can go through at high speed. So that's an improvement. 95 and 1, I mean, we have received all kinds of comments from people. Actually, now people are complaining that we didn't widen 1 all the way down further, which was one of the projects we had we have in design, but you have to stop at some point because of the money. 95 and 202, we had hours of delay there before we opened up that second lane. And so I actually think we've made a lot of improvements on 95. Delaware is very blessed in the sense that we have a 10-lane facility for most of that stretch between that area, but now we've taken some of that capacity and it's closed down. I think it really drives home the importance to people of, you know, what roads mean to them. And we want to make sure that we get that open as quickly as possible.
Any more questions for Harry or Greg?
Did you say that once you get the piers, the new piers in place, you're gonna have to jack up that entire section of superstructure at the same time?
That's correct.
Is that one of the reasons why a tear down might be needed, because you just won't be able to do that?
No, probably the, really,
What would be the
no.
reason for the tear down? What would go wrong or not with the plan?
Working out, trying to find the equipment to work under the bridge has been a critical factor, and we've developed our design around the equipment and procuring the materials. So the further that we get those materials in place, you know, the ones from Washington, the ones from New York, and the equipment actually showing up, the question marks that are there because we're building around an existing bridge come off the sheet one after another.
Are you confident that the superstructure could handle the stress of being jacked up?
Yeah, right now, we've looked at we've documented the shape, the existing shape and the deflections. We've done preliminary analyses to confirm the current conditions, and we are in the process of working out the actual sequence to return this to its proper shape. But right now, we have no evidence of any permanent distress in it. It's just, it rode the substructure down, and it will go back up if we restore the bearings in the proper position.
Okay, one more question?
Has there been any discussion of expanded or additional transit service for the duration of the closure?
Yeah, so one of the first, on my long list of things to do was to reach out to my DTC director, John Sisson, who's in the back, to say, what do we do to get people more aware of the SEPTA service, for example. So if you are driving in the morning up to Philadelphia, we actually have SEPTA service that that you can leave your car at home and get on, not just in Wilmington, but at the Fairplay station as well. And so that is a service that is available. We are making transit more of an option. We want people to take transit and use other alternatives. So we have an active campaign right now to make that more available.
What did it look like this weekend? You mentioned on Friday at the Firefighters Conference that it was important to see how this played out over the weekend, to know what the traffic impact was going to be when those people came down. People were going to beaches this weekend. What did it end up looking like on Friday night?
I think it was a busy weekend, and I think that there was some congestion, there was some backup, and I think that next weekend people will, Friday night is busy on 95. Sunday afternoon is busy on 95, and taking 495 out of the equation, there's no way to go from busy to better, right? But we feel like we've got a plan in place, and we're going to continue to monitor it, and we've got data sensors. And again, I would just let people know that if you download the app, you can get real-time traffic conditions. You can get all of our updates. You can listen to 1380 or the radio station that will tell you exactly what is going on. And it's better to be forewarned than it is to arrive without that knowledge. So thank you very much. And we will be, when we have some more information, we'll bring you all back again.
Thank you.